science and technology, and consider what we have around us. And in East Africa, we always say we have abundant natural resources, and these are seen in many ways, where you could talk about forest environment, where you could speak about minerals, where you could even talk about the sun we have, or wind we have here and there, and then production. In most of areas it is green, so it means we have a lot of biomass. We do a lot of agriculture. We harvest and you have left waste here and there. So you consider all of this, you link that with science, and try to find out what you can get from these different natural resources by using maybe the best approaches of I would say inclusivity, where you don't want to leave a lot of waste, where you will try to find out how even what is waste or what is called waste can generate some other income, and for the good of our people, because at the end, what we consider is our population. How can we, using what we have, friendly environmental approaches, ensure sustainability of our production, and then sustain the livelihoods of our population. So I would say that even traditionally, when you are doing agriculture, livestock, you can link agriculture and then livestock, getting the waste from animals, using them for improving the productivity, and also getting the results, which is considered as waste after you have harvested, and to transform this in rich manure, which can be used to increase again productivity. These are things which are happening in our region. When you see, for instance, the biogas production, where you are taking maybe waste from agriculture production or even from animal production and transform this in energy. These are approaches which can actually be pushed forward, and it is happening already. We are producing energy using wind, using solar, we are producing biomass. In this kind of economy, if you try to maximize the use of this and that in a complementary way, I think you can have these different examples on what is happening on the ground. And also, we have had Rwanda talking about green policy or green strategy. And here we talk also about green, clean industry, where you are pushing for actually having the minimum waste and trying to promote clean production in a sustainable way. There are many examples. When you talk about biodegradable packaging industries, these are things which can actually be seen as examples, which can be, if it is done maybe at a smaller scale, which can be extended, expanded, so that they can actually become the normal instead of seeing them as exception. Because when you compare this kind of production, it is not promoted as it should be promoted, and this different example can be upscaled and keep on this approach with a new strategy, then having them common, not as exceptions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would want to take it further from there. Yes, you've given some examples from different sectors. A follow-up question is, I believe that these examples you've given are not like on paper. There are physical examples in terms of industries, converting waste to wealth, and using all these biological resources to create wealth, and so on and so forth. So if there are those, what will you say is could be? I heard you here mentioning using some statistics. Could you say is the kind of contribution that these bioeconomy industries or initiatives or innovations have made to the GDP? That's exactly what you used of economies in the region. How would you say is the percentage contribution? Or can you propose or guess how much? Because we want to know, is this thing emerging? Has it taken shape already? How is the contribution trend increasing or decreasing or being static? Something like that.
So thank you. Let me say that in the common life from the past, you move from an economy in Africa, which was based actually on bio. Yeah? If you consider the history of Africa, we have been moving like that. It's only recent when we have been in contact with Europe and developed countries that the change has come, where actually the market for Europa products and elsewhere has been influencing actually the change of approaches in our different countries. So it means the adoption of new innovation from developed countries has a bit slowed down what we were doing, and this fossil oil economy has been to Firefront promoted, and it is the same which has actually taken the lead. Now we are trying going back and trying to reverse the process, but not 100%, but maybe compromising. There are things you cannot remove 100%, but just come back and try to readjust, improve. If you go in agriculture, we have been doing agriculture without fertilizers, without insecticides, and what was brought was from industries, manufactured one. But you can also produce biofertilizers, you can produce biopesticide here and there. But unfortunately, again, we have to balance between the needs of a growing population and then the increase of productivity using this and that. I would say that if you consider the situation in which we are, bioeconomy is playing a role, but not recognized role, because kind of analysis to try to find out which is the right contribution has not been done so far in a wide scale. But one could say that when you see what is happening in agriculture, when you see what is happening in pharmaceutical, when you see what is happening in industry in general, you will say you are using a lot of fossil oil for the time being, and in bioeconomy consideration, I would say we are not maybe above 30%, between 10 and 30%, but these are just estimates from my kind of thinking, because there is no thorough studies or clear analysis which has been done around this. But looking back, we find out that actually the contribution is huge.
Okay.
Thank
you
you.
very much for exhaustively discussing that. Let me come to you, Ben Donham. You are with us?
Yes, I am.
Good. Very good. So you listened to Honorable when he was making his first discussions on this, and he talked about different sectors of bioeconomy. And I would want to kind of, as an expert and someone who has traveled and walked around this new initiative, which sector would you say is the most important sector for bioeconomy development or transformation, either in your country or region or for Africa? And why would you say that?
Excellent. Great question. What I would say to that is it's very difficult to pick out just one, in the sense that there are a variety of sectors which have different motivators, different drivers, and different outcomes and impacts. And depending on who you are talking to, the different sectors will be more appealing or less appealing to them. So obviously agriculture features very highly because the African continent, the GDP is largely based on agricultural production and to some extent on agro-processing. So it's creating jobs and providing the food. But nevertheless, health is obviously also a critically important one. The Society of Africa is in need of health solutions, given that we have a high infectious disease rate and so on. And so health has got its definite appeals. When we look at the impacts of climate change, though, we need to recognize that industrial biotech has got enormous potential to transform industry such that, as has been mentioned, we can have a far greater environmentally friendly approach with a reduced carbon footprint. And then the last point that I would make is indigenous knowledge is a very strong phenomenon in Africa. And here in South Africa, we are exploiting indigenous knowledge. We are harnessing it for the benefit of the people. Moderator, perhaps I can share my slides and give my presentation with your blessing.
Well, it depends. I hope it will be a very short one, considering time constraints that we have. I would gladly want to see such presentation, especially if it's short and answering to some of these issues we have raised. Please, do you have an idea of how long it is?
It's 8 slides, but it will be a short presentation.
Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes to present the 8 slides.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can enlarge it.
Great. So just a very brief presentation talking to what's happened in South Africa. And firstly, thanks to the organizers for the invitation. It's always good to engage on the bioeconomy topic in Africa, where we all believe it has so much potential. So just a brief overview of where our bioeconomy strategy came from. Democracy started in South Africa in 1994, and in 1996, we had a white paper on science and technology that looked at repositioning the science system to address the needs of all of the South African society, not just a group of it. And so we were looking at science and technology for poverty reduction, energy, water and sanitation, and food security. Then in 2001, we published our biotechnology strategy. This was a strategy that sought to develop our capabilities in biotechnology. And I note this followed after the development of our GMO Act. So even before the biotech strategy, we had developed a policy to guide the introduction of GMOs into South Africa. Then we developed a 10-year innovation plan that looks across the whole of the Department of Science and Innovation, and bioeconomy was one of the features. And then in 2013, we published our new strategy, the bioeconomy strategy, which differed substantially from the biotech strategy in that it's focusing on the economic, particularly the economic, but the socioeconomic outputs of biotechnology on the broader economy. So quite a different approach, not just developing the skills, but looking at the value chains and how to develop biotech products such that they reach the market and have a socioeconomic impact. Then we've redeveloped our white paper on science technology, and the difference is it's now also on innovation, where we're focusing very strongly on innovation, and we are currently about to publish our decadal plan, which talks to the implementation of that. So what is the bioeconomy? Very briefly, in Europe, it comprises those parts of the economy that use renewable biological resources from land and sea to produce food, materials, and energy. That's the European definition. In South Africa, we have a slightly different take, and we are saying that it's activities that use bio-innovations based on biological resources, etc., and it's the entire innovation system network ranging from ideas and research through to manufacturing and commercialization. And it's in these four main areas at the bottom: health innovation, agricultural bioinnovation, industry and environmental biotech, and indigenous knowledge-based innovation. So the European definition is recycle, reuse, sustainable and green, whereas the South African thing focuses very much more on the socioeconomic outcomes of this remarkable technology. So quite a difference, although still talking to the same bioeconomy. So three key features in the future. Precision is becoming a very strong component of a bioeconomy. And if we're looking at healthcare for all, we are developing genomic and precision medicine that is already starting to have an impact on healthcare. In agriculture, there's precision agriculture. We're looking at supporting small-scale farmers and developing nutrition, improving nutrition. But with the precision side, we are improving the ability to produce, to be more productive on every hectare of land. A second feature of the bioeconomy is convergence. The market is not looking for a solution that is based on one discipline. It wants a holistic solution. So really we are talking to the convergence of ideas. Examples are bringing together indigenous knowledge and science to create new products, biotech and traditional industry, new ways to manufacture as some examples to improve competitiveness, wealth, and job creation. The third one is looking at value addition from biomass, and there are different categories of this, but ultimately this is from renewable and primary productive resources. So effectively, you are growing your wealth. Second last slide, South Africa has measured its bioeconomy. This is not yet published, but we are attributing approximately 8% of our GDP to the bioeconomy. It is likely that elsewhere in Africa this will be much higher, given that agriculture forms a much stronger part of other economies. In South Africa, it's only 2% of our economy, agriculture directly. But 1.5 million people are employed in the bioeconomy in South Africa. And this is the number of students, this is the sales that we having and exports. And we note that there is an increasing unit value of exports, which means that the sophistication of the products is increasing. And then last slide, and this is just a very brief overview, that the future of the bioeconomy is to more strongly establish the outputs and impacts from the bioeconomy. it's really important to develop the value chains, and we've been through the phases of skills development and developing the value chains, addressing the gaps and challenges. And what we are aiming in the next period is to increase the outputs and impacts. And we recognize that we are just one country on the continent and one country in the world, and it is critically important that we develop the partnerships across the continent and globe, because we are all in the same boat together. We need to mitigate the human impact on the environment, and we need to ensure that there is sustainable development. With that, I thanks very much, and I'm looking forward to the further engagement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I think you already predicted most of the questions I was going to throw to you, and you just used this one silver bullet to answer most of them. But yet, before you drop, I've seen some great achievements from the South African side. My question or follow-up question will be, how did you get there as a country? And how do you think, because South Africa has made great effort, how can the SADC region learn from what you have done and now develop, because we don't have a bioeconomy strategy or policy for SADC? Is there any lessons you think that SADC can learn, or are there roles you think you can play as the chief director here to ensure that what South Africa has is upscaled to SADC, and by extension ECOWAS, as while the East Africa community is still finding their grounds to operationalize their own strategy? So how did you get there? And what lessons can be learned for others so that we can leapfrog? We don't want to fall into the pits you had fallen into while you were undertaking these processes. Thank you.
Great, Nicholas. Thanks very much. Good question. I think the process started in South Africa because our political leaders recognized the potential of biotechnology and the development of a bioeconomy. So I think that is possibly the most critical factor, is ensuring that there's political will and adequate recognition of the power and the potential of biotechnology. What I mentioned, we started with a biotechnology strategy, and then in 2013, 2014, we developed a bioeconomy strategy. The key feature, the key difference is that it's not enough to develop skills. As a government official, what you want to be sure of is that the value chains are well enough developed and robust to allow good ideas to go through their development phases and ultimately reach the market. So, for example, a health product, you need to make sure that the regulatory authority has the appropriate skills and capabilities in order to regulate health products. It's no good developing a health product when there is not the policy and regulatory capability in the country. So there are a whole range of steps and challenges that need to be looked at on the value chain to make sure that a good idea, a good biotechnology idea, has an opportunity of reaching the market. So another critical factor is then looking at that value chain. The third most important point that I will raise is partnerships with industry. As a government official, we tend to think that we are creating the vision and the opportunity, but without industry participation, without industry and academic participation, it's very unlikely that you are going to get the groundswell of movement to carry these good ideas across the value chains that you've developed into the market. industry has the skills, industry has the capability, and industry has the financial resources to champion products, to take them across the value chain and guide their introduction into the market, something that both academia and government are not particularly good at. So the last point I'm emphasizing really is it's about partnerships. And then you asked about uh, across the continent in Africa. Definitely, there are so many lessons that South Africa has learned from from our journey over the last 20 years in developing our bioeconomy, and we would be only too happy to share, whether individually or in conferences such as this, the lessons that we've learned and the processes that we followed. And the last point that I will say is that we need to recognize that biotechnology is incredibly broad. It can be applied across the manufacturing industry, the health sectors, the agricultural sectors, and there are so many applications of biotechnology that it's not as though any one country can corner the market. This is about developing biotechnology-based products that are suitable to each individual application, each different country, each different region, and the different continents. There is still such enormous potential in biotechnology and in developing the bioeconomy, but it's done through partnership. This is a skills-based development, and we need to make sure that we are sharing the knowledge and developing these collaborative partnerships for development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think you have said it all. Very powerful. And as a policy analyst, what you said earlier really touched me about political leadership. Because my organization, the ATPS, we usually say that politics is superior to science. And most times, scientists try to fight us when we make that statement. But we also established that an STI-led development is a political endeavor. There is no way you can develop or leapfrog STI development without the political goodwill. And it is the political goodwill which you have re-emphasized today alongside with other factors like capacity, skills, collaboration, partnership with industry and research that have enabled you to come this far. So while I allow you to listen a bit, I don't know whether Bahasaho eventually joined us. He did not join us from ECOWAS. And this is really not so good because ECOWAS has not made, we really want them to learn these lessons, and we see how we integrate or join forces to have them on board with respect to bioeconomy development. But we will not end here. We will continue to push to reach them so that they participate maybe in other activities that BioInnovate Africa will be promoting around this. So, Honorable, I will come back to you now that you have listened very thoroughly and from your experience. You just developed your bioeconomy strategy as presented, and I would want to know how you've been able to collaborate with some agencies, commissions, like National Commission or National Councils for Science and Technology, or ministries or agencies. So can I know the kind of collaboration? Because if ECOWAS was to be here, I believe there are stakeholders from ECOWAS who are also listening to us, and they will take this message to the appropriate authorities. So if if a region like ECOWAS wants to commence the process of learning from you to develop a bioeconomy strategy or policy, what advice will you give them on how to start in terms of engagement with the relevant actors up to coming to this point where you now proudly say you have a bioeconomy strategy?
Thank you. I wish to say that East African community is just lucky by its setting. From the start, the partner state of East African community are normally requested to collaborate, and it should not be a choice, it's a must, because they have ratified the treaty for the establishment of the East African community. And under the treaty, there are clauses which clearly highlight sectors or areas of cooperation. And among them, STI is one of the areas of cooperation. The regional body, which is the Secretariat, and together with its institutions, once there is this ideas, Article 71 of the treaty requests actually the Secretariat to come with ideas and then to drive consultations among partner states so that a decision can be taken. And in that process, we, East African community, have, luckily enough, the East African Science and Technology Commission as an institution, which is requested actually to lead in that area of science and technology. The setting I was speaking about, it's a decision-making process, which normally, once you have this idea, having used maybe a consultant to move throughout the community and to understand how is the status, which are the challenges, and what could be the benefit of moving that direction, come up with a proposal. And then, with the proposal, we are requested again to move throughout to convene these people involved in this National Science and Technology Commission, to bring them together to discuss towards improving the document and enriching it. And once they are happy with the content, now we bring on board for decision-making people who are our ministers, and later on, if need be, the summit, the head of state. In the process of coming with a document to be adopted by ministers, then you convene also for experts in different ministries and institutions and private sector who are interested or however linked for the area, with the area you are dealing with. They come together, discuss. Later on, the report is considered by the permanent secretaries or principal secretaries, preparing for the ministers in charge to come in and to take the decision. So by doing so, once the ministers have taken a decision, this becomes now a regional document. But it is not enough because you have not stopped there. Once you have this regional one, which is normally also validated at different partner states at national level, you have to go back and sell it. And this is a process which is normally when you talk about awareness creation, advocacy, the idea behind is to bring with political people on board, to bring stakeholders on board, so that we build a kind of ownership towards sustained implementation. So this is the idea. The process, we have been using it, but now I think, and it's still needed, selling this, marketing or strategy, going back to the communities, to the different stakeholders, public, private, NGOs, and talking about the importance of it and bringing people on board in their day-to-day businesses to ensure they are doing the right thing. So we have done steps, but we still need actually to emphasize for full adoption of our approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Actually, you just also predicted what I would have asked again. My question would have been, what is the next steps? And I'm happy that you have captured it very well by saying that in as much as the regional bloc has adopted this strategy, there is still a lot to be done in terms of marketing, in terms of selling this strategy for it to be domesticated at the different countries. And this is what you see as the next steps for this strategy that you have developed at the regional bloc. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that. And for the countries in the region that have participated in this, we have had the Honorable and what he has said about next steps. I think doing the issue of advocacy and domestication, like you also pointed out, is not left for one person. And one thing I also that I admired from your speech is when you were talking about institution. Institution is very important. For instance, you mentioned ISTECO as an institution that has that mandate to rally around other stakeholders to do this dirty job for you and come up with this good result. So that is the importance of institution. And we will continue to promote good institutions in our different regional blocks to enable us to take, apart from developing good initiatives, but also take it forward towards domestication. And like I was trying to say, different actors will come in now to help in this domestication. To civil society actors, the ministries, the private sector, as we have had, because they are the ones that will take up these innovations coming from bioeconomy development to commercialize, create jobs, and also improve livelihoods. We know that time is not on our side, and that maybe just to come back to you, Ben, I know your presentation was very holistic, but then can you just tell me the role that the private sector played strictly in this bioeconomy development process in your country, and how, because my previous question to you, I wanted to know your role, what you can do to take this out.
Great. I seem to be having a network problem. Can you hear me?
We are hearing you.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Thanks very much for the question. I just want to support what the Honorable Bazivamo just said. The bioeconomy is not something that you can just take off the shelf and implement. It is a journey. There are various steps, there are various phases of development of a bioeconomy that need to be followed through. And it's also important to recognize that what works in South Africa, what works in North America, what works in Asia is not exactly what will work on our continent and in each different country. So this is a learning process, and we would encourage that you try and learn the lessons from other experiences, but ultimately to apply biotechnology in a country is a complex matter, and it's something that needs to be nurtured and grown and developed. So a critical point that the Honourable Bazivamo has made. Then, with respect to your question, the role of the private sector and the importance. When we started out with our biotech strategy, a huge portion of the investment that was made in biotechnology was through government. I'm not denying that industry was also investing in biotechnology, but these were two separate and parallel streams. And our focus, our government focus was on developing capacities and capabilities, whereas industry was focusing much more on the development of new products. And what has proved to be far more productive in the process is by bringing industry and government together. And I'm not undermining the importance of academia and NGOs and civil society. They are critical too, but nevertheless, the industry now is critical in working with us. They sit on our steering committees, and they help guide our investments such that what we are investing in has the best opportunity of success. So, for example, we don't just support postgraduate students, we support postgraduate students in areas where industry is helping to identify as having an employment opportunity and a growth area for the industry. So there's a greater probability now that students that are trained in biotechnology are going to find application. That's one area. The second point to note is that the investment that the South African government is making in biotechnology, so our gross expenditure on R&D is around 0.8% of our GDP. So it's less than 1%. And if you compare this to OECD countries, which range from 2.5 up to 4 or even more percent of GDP, you recognize that the South African investment is small. And so what we need to do is make our investments so much more efficient. And we, as I said, we do this in partnerships with others to make sure that what we are doing is most likely to have success. The last point that I want to make is that through these partnerships, we have leveraged more money than we are putting into biotechnology ourselves. So by the merging of minds of industry and government and academia and civil society, we are making sure that we are leveraging the resources necessary to undertake the developments. So bottom line, from a government perspective, we can achieve so much more because of these partnerships. And it's not that we are giving our money to industry and saying, run with it. This is a genuine partnership where we discuss what we see as the important issues. Industry will present what they think are important. And where there is overlap and common interest, that is where we are co-investing on projects. And so far, industry and government are very happy about this partnership because we are achieving so much more than if we would be doing it individually.
And SADC?
The role of SADC?
Yes.
So this is something that has been lagging behind. It is something that we recognize, we in South Africa recognize as something that we need to further develop. We have a program called SANBio, the Southern African Network for Biosciences, similar to the ECOWAS and the four regions of Africa under the AU. So SANBio is our initiative in the SADC region where we are partnering with the different countries, and we've identified different theme projects, and what we seek to do then is get partnerships from the region in developing those projects or programs or capacity development initiatives, whatever they are. So SANBio is of growing importance, or the networking. We've also got something called the International Center for Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, which is an Italian-hosted initiative for the developing world. And South Africa has the third leg of this ICGEB. The first one is in Trieste in Italy, the second one is in New Delhi in India, and we have one in Cape Town in South Africa. The point that we made when taking on the third leg of the ICGEB is that it's not an ICGEB center for South Africa, it's an ICGEB for Africa. And we are strongly encouraging, and some of you definitely will have engaged on ICGEB programs. We are strongly encouraging the ICGEB to expand its footprint into Africa and to increase the collaboration and partnerships. That's not limited just to SADC, that's across the whole continent. But bottom line is, it is of critical importance to develop partnerships in the region and across the continent.
All right. Thank you very much for emphasizing on those institutions that could take it forward. As we conclude this session, Honorable, I would want you to wrap up in 30 seconds, 1 minute. What can you say will be the role of policy or strategy in strengthening bioeconomy development in Africa or in the region?
So thank you. Throughout, we have been saying it is possible. The most important thing is to know about it. It is there, it is possible, it can be upscaled, but we have to own it. So the issue of awareness creation, bringing on the table decision makers, building partnership, not only under public sector, but public sector, private sector, and using all means, including parliamentarians, so that this ownership can be there is very, very key. And I trust in it. It is possible. Let us move together. We shall achieve. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Ownership, very important. Awareness creation, very important. I will come back to you, Ben. Just 30 seconds, wrap up. Final idea.
Great, thank you. So in taking the bioeconomy forward, it's critical to recognize that we need to create an enabling environment for biotechnology. And this is multifaceted, but what we want to do is make sure that the biotechnology ideas have every chance of success. So we need to recognize that biotechnology is often science-based, and it is critical that we develop capacities in science. We need to, and this is a point I've been pushing, we need to recognize the importance of partnerships, that you can do so much more with partnerships. We need to recognize that the movement of an idea towards the market goes across various steps in a value chain, and you need to be aware of that value chain and make sure that it has the necessary support and infrastructure and regulatory support to enable it. And you need to recognize that ideas are developed by people, by entrepreneurs, by innovators, and you need to be able to support these people to make sure that they are enabled in taking their products to market. So bottom line is we need to create a broad enabling environment for the bioeconomy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Broad enabling environment necessary for bioeconomy development. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of this session. But before then, we will have a poll question, which we would want those that are online to answer as Dr. Silas Obukosia gets ready to give us a closing remark for this session. So the poll question is, which sector of your country's economy would you first propose for bioeconomy development to be prioritized? Which sector of your country's economy would you first propose for bioeconomy development to be prioritized? So we take 30 seconds to answer this question, those who are with us online, and then we allow Dr. Silas to conclude this session. Would like to get the results of the poll once it is done, hoping our internet allows. So the results, can we see the results online? Yeah. Okay. So we have waste management and environment, 33%, pharmaceuticals, 17%. So most of the responses are gearing towards environment, waste management, and pharmaceuticals. So with this, as we continue to get responses, I think it's over now. Other sectors are getting gradually. Agriculture. Great. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This is just to give us a brief overview of food, pulp, and paper has come in. Biotechnology, 4%. Food, 4%. Waste has dropped to 25%. So keep voting, and maybe by the time we finish, we will know. But remember, like Ben said, there is no one size fits it all. There is need for contextualization, for situational analysis, depending on how it fits and fits your country. So at this point, I want to invite Dr. Silas to give us a closing remark. Silas is from Auda, Nepal. Over.
Thank you, Nicholas. I want to appreciate the speakers, and I'll just pick some very common points that they have all talked about. The first key point that comes up is that Africa has a lot of biodiversity that came up from the video and came up from the minister. So we have it actually. The second point that came out that was very strong is that we need a regional approach, and the regional approach should fit into the national approaches. And the other very important point came out that we need a strategy, and I think the chair Nicholas said It's a pathway through which you can measure impact. Yeah. Then he mentioned one very important point so that we can know the socio-economic contribution of this bioeconomy to African nation here. So that came out to be very strong and very important here. The other point why we need a strategy was that when Nicholas asked what is the percent of bioeconomic contribution here, the minister gave an estimate of 10 to 30%. South Africa, they gave an estimate of 8%, but still the figure is not clear, and that underlines the need for the strategy, why we need here. We got other sharing in South Africa. What sector is most important? And he said, it depends on whom you talk to, but talk of agriculture may feature highly, health may feature highly, industry is also very important, especially for transformation, and they mentioned the indigenous knowledge here. But the key thing there is that they say they categorized their section into four: health, innovation, agriculture, industry and environment, and gymnasium. One very important point was what is an example of national development of a strategy? And South Africa being a good example, where, for example, they followed the political support. Then, first of all, they worked on biotech strategy, and then they worked on a bioeconomy strategy. But most importantly, he said that we need a value chain approach. And then with value chain approach, we won't be able to have some robust program here. But lastly, he said we need partnerships with industry and academia. That is very important if we can have a sustainable bioeconomy strategy. Honorable Minister shared about an example of a regional approach, and they used the East African platform, where they have got a secretariat, then they have got East African Science for Technological Cooperation, then the ministers making the decisions, then of course they have partnerships coming on strongly. But the last point, which was emphasized, is come out so many times, these things need to be domesticated here. They need to be awareness, creation, advocacy for us to have ownership here. The last question was, what is the role of the private sector? And Ben gave some very nice, interesting points. He said a bioeconomy development is a step by step, but you can't cut and paste. There will be continental specific approaches. There will be country specific approaches here. And he gave a very interesting thing that countries need to invest a lot in bioeconomy. He gave 0.8% for South Africa, and OECD, they are at 3 to 4% of the GDP is I think invested in science, technology, and I think that is very, very much challenging actually. Then he mentioned one thing that I want to underline over and over: we need more of industry support, we need government support, we need academic support, and we need civil society support here. So we see examples, we have got the resources, we need a strategy. There are examples at the national, examples at the regional, but we need private sector involvement and domestication of this year. So, Chairman, I'll stop there. I think my 5 minutes are over. Thank you very much.
Very much. We appreciate this summary, which has really captured and summarized all that we've been discussing today in this session. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would want you to appreciate our speakers, please, through a clap for them, please. Thank you very much. I thank everyone that have contributed to this discussion. God bless.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're only break for 5 minutes, and then Thank you so much.
Thank you. Honorable.